circling our tomorrows. In the way.
Boston Free Radio is a member-run station located in Union Square, Somerville. Your voice, your music, your station. To learn how you can host your own radio show, contact manager at bostonfreeradio.com.
You want free speech? I got your free speech right here. It's all about free speech, baby. bostonfreeradio.com.
Today the world is born.
Welcome once again. Thought of the Day Radio. I hope you have had a good, whatever you want to call it, Columbus Day, or if you want to call it Indigenous Peoples Day. That's another show. That's another show indeed. But today, since it kind of sparked me, that whole debate that I've been studying on just so I could be knowledgeable about it, we're going to talk about human depravity today. Very exciting stuff. The question today is, are human beings inherently good or inherently evil and wicked? It is not something that we like to ask ourselves even. We all like to present ourselves as good people. We all like to present ourselves as, being kind and loving and wonderful and maybe even wise. But, and that was a personal struggle for myself, and still is at times, where I would rather present myself as being more knowledgeable and more understanding or more kind or more whatever than I really am. And that really is not the fundamental of Christianity. And the real question then is, once we are saved, what are we to do? Are we to continue growing? Are we to continue in the mindset that we were once in? Or are we to forsake that? Of course, we are to forsake that, but what mindset are we to be in? Are we to now say we have arrived and made it, and we no longer have to fight the evil inclination to sin? Or are we to be on guard 24/7? And I think somewhere in the middle of that, there's an answer. And so we're going to get into that today with our portion, Noach, which is Genesis 6 through 11. But I'm going to focus on the very disturbing part and the purpose and reason for the flood, which God clearly outlines in this portion. But at first, I want to say this in the words of a few wise individuals that I tend to listen to. Mr. Rabbi Zacharias, who has been asked this question, and also Paul Washer, whom many tend to disagree with because he's Calvinistic. But it's very appropriate because we're talking about total depravity, which in the true Calvinistic sense of John Calvin, his theology is the T in tulip. I'm not sure of the whole thing right now, but the T in tulip means total depravity. You cannot truly understand the purpose for salvation unless you truly understand how the depths of your soul and your heart And we'll also talk a little bit about the definition for those things. Many people do not even think to question what is a soul, what is a mind? Because it's very important. I mean, if the law is transferred to our heart, then what is the heart? How do we see that? Is it our thoughts? Is it our actions? And also the difference between Greek philosophy and Jewish thinking, Jewish biblical thinking, logic. How do we see these things? Our perspective. And it's really, truly amazing. If anybody watches the Bible studies that we have with the Be Ready Street Ministries team, and we have Bible studies on Tuesday nights and Thursday nights. Could be joined by anybody. We do this on Facebook Live. A lot of people who join us, and we tend to see things differently. We could be looking at the same text and yet see things totally differently. And so starting out our portions, I want to start thinking about how we approach the scriptures. What foundations do we have to interpret the rest of the scriptures? But here we go with Rabbi Zacharias, and the student has asked him this very question. Are humans inherently, the video is actually entitled Born to be Good or Born to be Evil on YouTube.
With the movie Silence of the Lambs, but in that movie...
Please say that again, familiar?
The movie Silence of the Lambs. In
Yes.
that movie, there's a psychotic but brilliant guy named Hannibal
Yes.
Lecter who questions Clarice, who's trying to analyze him. Are you uncomfortable with the fact that maybe I'm just evil without sense or reason? So along with that, is man inherently born evil with the need for Christ to make that man good? Or are we born inherently good with sin and evil just damaging our inherent goodness?
Great question. It is interesting, again, I think the Judeo-Christian worldview, again, stands very distinctively here. Remember, for example, the teaching of Gautama Buddha is that all suffering is a result of desire. He doesn't call it sin, he calls it desire. So if you eliminate desire, you'll eliminate suffering. And I remember talking to a group of Buddhist scholars once when I wrote my book, The Lotus and the Cross, Jesus Talks to Buddha. And I was doing an interview with them in Thailand and Malaysia and all of that. And I asked them if indeed the desire is the source of all suffering. And if you eliminate desire, then suffering itself is eliminated. I said, can you explain to me why the Dalai Lama desires the liberation of Tibet? If he has reached that plateau of being the perfect human being, as it were, why does he still desire the liberation of Tibet? There was silence in the room. And one of them said, because he chooses to. And we had a fascinating discussion at the end of that. Is he choosing to be less than what he knows to be right as the perfect human being? And the more we talked, it became inescapable to discuss the issue that humanity's will is fallen. Our desires are to serve ourselves. When Christ comes into your life, he doesn't tell you to stop desiring. This is the only faith in the world that talks about a supernatural regeneration. It's a new birth, so that he changes your hungers and he changes what you want. He doesn't tell you to stop hungering. He said, blessed are those that hunger and thirst after righteousness. Fallen humanity does not mean that we cannot do anything good. It ultimately demonstrates that what separates us from God is not goodness or badness. What separates us from God is spiritual deadness. Jesus didn't come into the world to make bad people good. He came into the world to make dead people live. And you and I are spiritually dead, separated. And when he comes and changes you, there are many people who are atheists who live very good lives, who may do many good things. But the issue then is that goodness then the badge of honor to merit some kind of accolade? And Christ says, no, we are all lost. And ultimately, And that's why, by the way, Mahatma Gandhi said this. He said the most enigmatic thing about any religion is in the Christian faith. It's the cross. There's nothing like it. Martin Luther King Jr. so often spoke of the cross as that which kept motivating and driving him. Why the cross? Because of your condition and mine. The problem is that our morality will not change us. We are spiritually separated. So the Bible says we are born separated from God, and that separation can only be bridged by God himself.
So in our discussions of in the past couple of shows, we were talking about the need for government and the need for just court systems in the wake of Judge Kavanaugh, who is now judge, supposedly is confirmed. So in the wake of all this, I was thinking about more about the origins and philosophy of Marxism and the need for some sort of totalitarian regime, or so that we could have some sort of a utopian society in the clash of all civilizations and philosophy, so that we can figure out what the truth is. What some refer to as the Hegelian dialectic, meaning there is so much strife and so much back and forth, which is what's going on in our country. There's a lot of division in our country, and there's always been a lot of back and forth. However, what is the ultimate goal here? Is the ultimate goal, like Ravi was saying, is to destroy desire, somehow have some total control over our lives because we can't be trusted? Or is it that the government is meant to just simply serve and to oversee because we have the freedom? And so we talked about that last week. But the point that I'm making here is that why do these philosophies, who are very nihilistic in nature, who don't seem to have a care in the world for morality, why do they need to create a utopian society in which, if there's no problem, if there's no morality, if there's no objective morality, why do we need a government in the first place? And I know that's part of anarchistic thinking, in which there is no need for a government because we are inherently good. And that it's society that corrupts the mind or the soul or the spirit. And by the way, what is the mind, soul, the spirit, as I was asking before? So if we don't answer these fundamental questions, then what right do we have to establish some sort of system in which one controls another? And in fact,